This Human Resources Committee to order. We will start with number 1, approval of the 3/8 of 2021 minutes. They're in your packet. Any concerns or questions? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to accept.
I'll so do.
Thank you. Motion by Larson, second by Herbst. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that passes. Somebody just came out.
That's my meeting reminder.
Okay.
Apologies.
Number 2 is Human Resources Report for March. It's in your packet. Any questions? Seeing none, I guess we can put that on file. Number 3, discussion and possible action reclassifying stockroom specialist to parts specialist.
So we have a vacancy coming up due to retirement, and when the job requisition came in, it included some additional duties. The position would, in addition to the previous responsibilities, also be in charge of the underground fuel storage tank facilities, and that requires some certification requirements, and the additional responsibilities did value an increase in classification. So we're recommending increasing this position by 2 pay grades. It would make it equivalent to an admin 2. I don't know if there's any questions about that change.
Go ahead, Mike.
I guess the question I had is that, who would, the big change in this job description is, in the management of the underground, fuel storage, the fueling system. Who was doing that before?
The Mark Hansen, so he is the facilities and there's another F, fleet and facilities manager.
Okay, okay. So that's taking something off of his plate then?
It would be. It's largely dealing with a contractor. But yes, he had been doing that.
Okay. Okay, yeah,
That was my first question too, when I got the request in.
That sounds
Whose job
reasonable.
description should I take this off of?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Otherwise, I can take a motion to go forward with this reclassification.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And second by Herbst. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that passes unanimously as well. Okay, and we're on discussion and possible action approving an incentive program for employees who elect to receive a COVID-19 vaccine. I'm sure my committee remembers that we talked about this a couple months ago, I think, already. And then it came to council, and I was the one who motioned to table it as we got last-minute information that it was going to cost upwards of $40,000 from a budget-neutral request for overtime for the fire department. And I think that passed unanimously to send it back to HR. I still feel that we need to speak to this because, when you're changing something so quickly, budget neutral to $40,000, I think our taxpayers deserve more than, a quick rundown of this. This is, everybody remembers, is that we were going to incentivize employees who were elected to receive the vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, a day for each of the vaccines of the 2 vaccines. I think, was Johnson & Johnson even available then? Because I don't believe so, because we didn't talk about just a one-shot deal. So things have changed a bit in this. And I look forward to some discussion. Anybody have any thoughts? Otherwise, I'll keep going. Because I have some. Go ahead.
Otherwise, I'll start out. So, I know, when this came before Common Council, the sticking point was the overtime that would be accrued by the fire department. But haven't many of our first responders already received the vaccine? So that would be, the incentive program would be a moot point for them?
So our intention for equity purposes would be individuals who had already received the vaccine would still be eligible for the incentive, even though it probably didn't play into their decision to vaccinate. Because the police and fire departments were vaccinated before the program was in place, anyone who had already vaccinated would get the benefit. Assuming those unions negotiated benefit, which I anticipate they would.
Okay, okay.
I'm going to sound like a mean person, but I really don't think we need to do this. I don't think we need to incentivize this for those, because most of the people are going and getting their vaccinations. So I'm not in favor of this. I don't support it at all.
I guess I would be in favor of it if there wasn't any cost involved. You know, we got I believe I read something from the police department that there's really no cost involved in that, but like Alder Martin said, you know, we didn't hear anything about the fire department. Is that still gonna be overtime costs involved in that, you know? I don't recall seeing anything like that in the packet.
Yeah, I think Interim Chief Bartek could speak to the impact on the fire department.
Sure. Good afternoon. So knowing this was a topic for tonight, and I actually had talked to Tony and the mayor briefly last week about it. Chief Kajal was right. If at the way it was written as it was proposed last year, our 2021 vacation schedule is fairly full. How the vacation schedule works for the firefighters is we have 18 firefighters assigned per crew. There's 2 available vacation slots for the union and 1 for management. So we have a minimum staffing of 15. The vacation schedule is fairly full for the remainder of 2021. The way that we could make this work inside the fire department so we don't have an overtime implication is to make it a comp time, which they can carry to the end of 2022. And then they can only use that time inside the vacation slots, which doesn't cause overtime. For us, the only way we could have done it into 2021 was to allow an extra slot off to allow these members to use that time, which would be way outside anything we've normally done. And so if they were allowed till the end of 2022 to use it as comp time, and at the end of that, it's a use it or lose it, their bank goes to zero at the end of 2022 if they have not posted, but they would have had adequate time at that point and adequate opportunity inside the vacation calendar in order for them to post it. The other thing that when we talk about days, I want to just speak to the fact that the firefighters work a 56-hour work week. They work a 24-hour shift. And so for a 40-hour work week employee to give them 2 days off is 16 hours. For a firefighter, that's 48 hours. If I were to ask for any revision, it would be that the firefighters would get a singular day, meaning 24 hours of incentive rather than the 2 days that the 40-hour employees would be getting. And that way, it would also allow us to fit it in there. Yes, to speak, that most of our firefighters have been vaccinated, about 60% of them. But I would like to see that number go higher, and I believe that given the research and the data that's coming out now with the volumes and millions of people that have been vaccinated safely, this could be a way that we could incentivize those who are on the fence about getting the vaccine or not. So I think that we can manage it in a way inside the fire department to keep that cost at zero. Of course, there's always a productivity element to that, and the fact that we would have a crew that could have been, you know, 1 more in staff instead it'll be more at the normal staffing. But we operate at minimal staffing daily. So, any questions?
I have a question about this. Are we able to, I want to know about parity, you know, when we do this with the fire department, you know, like cross-section of can we change and say, you know, we're going to give 2 days at 16 hours, you know, and then 1 day at 24 hours? Is that something we've done before?
Sure. Well, I'm not aware of any incentive of this nature that the city's done in the past and how that's been handled. Technically speaking, all of the unions have already negotiated their benefits. So the city could say, at the time we negotiated, we agreed to this, and we are not going to agree to any changes. It's usually not the stance the city takes, because that's, a pretty hard line stance. If we're adding benefits to other individuals, we like to consider that for our union people as well, out of fairness. It all comes down to what we feel is appropriate and fair. When it came to other COVID benefits, there was an argument with the fire department that by nature of their schedule, they should receive more COVID sick leave pay. But they were excluded by it under the FFCRA. So with those side letters, the city did take the stance that the law allowed this amount regardless of your work schedule. And we did not make exceptions for the fire department. Well, I'll take that back. We made minimal exceptions for the fire department because we were concerned with parity reasons. In my opinion, this incentive is slightly different. It is not covered by law. It's something that the city's just doing. And I think it comes down to what we think is appropriate and also what we're able to negotiate with the union.
So we would have to negotiate with the union before, then I guess, what are we voting on then?
Well, so,
I'm, now I'm backpedaling more than I was, because I can see that, but I also can see other employees up here going, why is he getting 24? And you can say all you want, but it's going to be that, and you know it. So now, and if we have to negotiate this with both unions or just one?
we'd negotiate it with all of the unions, Metro, Transit, and Police.
Okay.
And we do that anytime you guys change a benefit, for non-represented employees. So for example, earlier in the year when we extended the 80 hours of sick leave for COVID reasons, we take that to the unions and we negotiate what that will look like for each one of the unions. It's a really standard practice, and what we do is we negotiate something in line with what you've approved for everybody else. If there are changes appropriate, which is usually pretty rare, it's at the advice of the chiefs and occasionally in consultation with outside legal or with our in-house legal.
Okay, so, question. If we go and negotiate that the fire department gets 24 hours, let's just say, we're not saying anything,
Yes.
but let's just hypothetically, always say hypothetically, if we say, okay, they get 1 day, which is their 1 day work day, which is 24 hours, which is closest to the 16, do you believe that's parity?
In my opinion, yes. By virtue of their schedules, our intention with the 2 days was to offset illness from the shot. Employees have the ability, as well as, just for it to be a bit of a carrot. And with their schedules, I think it's easier for fire to be affected less with work schedule. So for example, it's easy, I have a little bit more flexibility to get a shot on a day where I don't work the next day.
But aren't we giving their COVID time off for a sick day for after a vaccine if they need it?
Employees are eligible to use their 80 hours of COVID sick leave for any adverse impacts as well, yes.
Any other questions? Concerns? If not, I can.
Now I'm starting to get a little confused on the entire intent of why we want to do this, if it's something, if this incentive is for employees to get their vaccinations, yet they can, say in the instance, hypothetically with fire, if they can bank this day off a year into the future, then what really is the purpose? I thought this incentive was to make it easier for an employee to go out and get the vaccine instead of you get the vaccine and then we'll give you this extra day, because it seems like, because now still you know, if they're getting the vaccine during work hours, they still have to make all of those schedules and whatnot in order to do that. And it's like, you know, I got my first dose, and it's like, it takes 2 hours out of your day in order to do that. So it's, so what's the, you know, is the point of the incentive to give them something in return of being vaccinated, or is it a way to ease the process of getting vaccinated?
I think it's kind of threefold. One is it's a carrot to encourage people to vaccinate. And it also is intended to ease any burden that vaccination may bring. I expect that burden to be pretty limited on our employees because we are offering the sick leave balances for usage. And we are allowing people off when possible on work hours to get the vaccine. But, you know, I think we're trying to do a number of things with it. Both encourage people as well as to make sure that it's as easy as possible to go out there and get vaccinated.
So if they can use their 80 hours, so that if they've got the flexibility to schedule, you know, when they can go in, because you know, you get the call, you go in. You know, it's not like you can schedule it 3 days down the road, or you can, but if they can use their 80 hours to, you know, if they get the vaccine and then they don't, you know, they need to take some time off, they're not tapping into their regular sick leave or comp time or PTO or anything. So
Yeah,
they've got that benefit there already.
Yes, that is true. We do have some people who have already been subject to quarantine who maybe might not have had those balances available, or who are looking to retain those balances for future quarantine needs of maybe family members, or when you're, you know, as regulations are evolving. Originally, people who are vaccinated were still potentially subject to quarantine. You know, so we do have some people, this benefit would allow people to retain those balances if needed. And like you said, it also serves as a carrot or a true incentive to maybe increase our number of folks who normally wouldn't vaccinate, but at the tune of a couple of days off would be willing to do it now.
Does the 80 hours of sick leave, did that roll over at the first of the year? Or is that 80 hours flat for the pandemic?
We reset it by council action in January of 2021.
Okay,
So people got fresh balances this year.
so if they were quarantined last year, they've still, you know, so.
Yes. Yeah, so that's another nice benefit that the city has offered, is that instead of rolling that over, we provided fresh balances. So folks who were subject to quarantine last year got a new 80 this year.
Okay. So there would probably be, that may be less of an issue of people using up their COVID balance on quarantine.
Certainly, if we hadn't reset those balances, it definitely would have been, we'd have a lot more people who didn't have anything available
Yeah.
this year.
Okay.
I think that was an important benefit that we extended.
Go ahead, Mrs. I just have two comments. First of all, they're opening up so many places that you can go and get your vaccination on weekends. So that has changed, you know, since with this all started. The other thing is, do you have a percentage of an idea of how many employees have gotten their vaccine?
Only anecdotal, because we're not incentivizing, we are also not tracking citywide employees who are vaccinated. Police and fire have reported both approximately 60% participation. It's much less than that general city, although I have a lot less of an idea for general city.
Just out of curiosity, why wouldn't someone want to get the vaccine? I guess is a question I have. I know there are people that say, well, I'm taking all these vitamins, I'm doing all this stuff, and I should be okay. I don't know. I just don't understand why people are not getting that vaccine.
I've heard of people who are mistrustful of the science, who are concerned because it's not a standard FDA approval. I'm aware of a couple of people who have religious obligation or objections to it. I think there's probably some people who have maybe a little bit more political objections to it. And again, that's just kind of anecdotally. We have not done a comprehensive survey of people's concerns regarding the vaccine.
Can I was just, something came to my sick mind here, and that is, you mentioned about tracking, because we don't have this program in place, we don't know how many people are getting vaccinated because we can't track them. And I'm wondering also, would be, by putting this in place, we're automatically tracking these people then, and would that be an infringement on their privacy?
It's not. Human Resources tracks a lot of employee vaccinations, particularly for police and fire by nature, more for fire by nature of the work that they do. But it's pretty standard. Even a lot of our public works positions were aware of what vaccines people have received because of exposure concerns. So no, I don't believe it's a privacy concern. We certainly would not make that information public. But much like we receive medical information for FMLA and job-related duties, Human Resources would confidentially maintain that information.
I have a few comments. I voted for this the first time and was kind of wobbly, and I've heard from some residents, and I did some thinking, and I guess I think we have done really great with our employees through this COVID. I mean, for us that started in March, before the new group came in, we had authorized very good scheduling, and they got their pay, and there was like 5 days on, 10 days off for DPW. I know that for sure. And there was all that we did to try to keep our employees safe. And I think that the city of Wausau and their taxpayers have really supported our employees. I do. We have, as she said, we have reset the COVID, the COVID 80 hours again in January. So if somebody does get ill for a day afterwards, they're not tapping into their personal sick pay. I'm not supporting this because I mean, maybe if somebody could tell me if it goes to council and gives me another point of view, but I've heard from some residents saying, what's next? And that's my question, what's next? I mean, when they need a booster, what do we give them? Because they will be back. What do we give them? I mean, I don't know what is going to be next. And it's like, I get that I want to incentivize people, but why? Nobody incentivized me, doing what's best for your coworkers and for your community should be part of this conversation as well. For the people that have, religious reasons or whatever, I don't know, do we put the carrot and say, well, please give those up for the vacation days? I don't know what to say. I'm not supporting this at this point. I don't know if it's budget neutral or not. We're now going into 2022. We have to negotiate with the, with the unions. I want everybody, to be the same. I want parity, and I'm not convinced that we have that. So, did you want to speak, Mayor? I think I saw you wanting to speak.
That was a ways back. I think the horse is out of the barn on this one. I do think it is important that we are looking out for each other and recognizing that it's not just any random moment in time. We're still in the middle of this global pandemic, so I'm willing to continue thinking through what this looks like and encouraging folks. But yeah, I know that when I was eligible for the vaccine, I went and got it immediately. So I think you're gonna see a bunch of different ideas about what's important right now for social responsibility. But I would love to encourage more people, especially the frontline workers, people who are encountering others more frequently, people who might be exposed. I think that's important. And maybe we just need to hear from some people about what they need. Maybe
Maybe.
us positing what they need isn't quite right. Maybe we need to say, what do you need? How can we help you? So,
Go ahead.
I'm with you, Madam Chair. I'm not going to support this.
Okay, we still need a motion and a second. We can vote no if we want it down, but we need to do the motion and second as a positive motion.
If the committee is interested, we also can do additional research on the types of, types of incentives, other options. We can do employee surveys. I'm willing to do additional work if that's what you
Okay.
guys are looking for. Basically, let me know and we'll do what you want me to do.
Is anybody in the committee looking for more different options?
I honestly think that, with what Tony has told us already, and that we've done more than enough already for our employees, this year to get their shots and stuff, and not, from what she has said to us, I really don't think there ought to be another incentive. I think we've incentivized them enough. And when you start talking about negotiating with the unions and stuff like that, it's a lot of time-consuming stuff.
Yeah, and I guess I just want to be clear that, again, it can sound scary, but really it's quite standard for us anytime we make a handbook benefit change, for us to consider parity with the unions, and via a side letter or a memorandum of understanding, we attempt to extend those benefits to represented as well as non-represented employees. So, I certainly do understand your concerns, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands that it's.
I understand too, but I just,
Okay.
there's more things that the HR department needs to be working on than chasing this, and that's why I feel that I'm not gonna support it, and if you want to further investigate into it, have at her, but I don't, I don't recommend it. Thank you.
go ahead, Mayor. I guess I just also want to point out that, we've had outbreaks here. It does have an effect on our workforce when people are exposed, if they're working in close quarters, if they, it is important that the employees are protecting each other from each other. So, that is another way to look at this, so.
You're gonna have to mute that. Well, I'm sorry, I remembered you, yes.
Yeah, I'm hard to forget. I just, the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, and I just feel that you're never gonna get 100%. You're lucky if you get 60%. You just can't make somebody go and get vaccinated if they don't want to. And I just think we're wasting our time, because I cannot support this either. Thank you.
I'm going to ask the parliamentarian, with nobody, I don't know what it is, do we still do a positive, or motion and vote down?
That's a good question, Becky. I think if no one makes a motion to even second, then you can't vote on anything.
Okay.
And you can't force people to make motions. But you're right, it's always framed in the affirmative, so if they make one, it could die for lack of a second, or you could get a second and then you could vote it down. But obviously, if there's no motion and no second, nothing gets advanced to council unless you direct the director to perform more research. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
And I guess that why would somebody want to make a motion to support something they're going to vote no on?
It's a procedural.
Yeah, so.
Yes, ma'am?
Yeah, and with that, I don't think we need to do more research unless we really want to see what the fiscal impact of this is going to be, but I think we've got enough of a grasp on this. So I'm going to make a motion that we approve the incentive program for employees who elect to receive a COVID-19 vaccine.
Okay, do I have a second on that? Any second? Without a second, that dies on the floor. And that's that. I guess, I don't know if you need to be directed, but if there's any other ideas, you can always bring them to us, right? I think that, as time goes on, we may need to do something or may not, or have another idea that's, less costly. Let's hear it. Okay, I guess that's it, so we can take a motion to adjourn. Thank you, and all in favor say aye. And we're adjourned, thank you.